Given the very real public health dangers and lack of accountability posed by illegal internet drug sellers, FDA should encourage the legitimate FDA-regulated promotional communication on the internet as a source of reliable information for patients and healthcare professionals. In addition, FDA and other government agencies should redouble enforcement efforts against unlawful internet drug sellers that could be sources of counterfeit medicines. According to the Department of Homeland Security, the internet has become the primary tool for criminal organizations to advertise, communicate, and conduct sales of counterfeit pharmaceuticals. Warning the public against fake H1N1 treatments just a few weeks ago, FDA Commissioner Hamburg stated, "Medicines purchased from websites operating outside the law put consumers at increased risk due to a higher potential that the products will be counterfeit, impure, contaminated, or have too little or too much active ingredient." FDA stated that it had purchased and analyzed several products represented online as Tamiflu. According to FDA, one of the orders, which arrived in an unmarked envelope postmarked from India, consisted of unlabeled white tablets taped between two pieces of paper. When analyzed by the FDA, the tablets were found to contain talc and acetaminophen, but none of the active ingredient for Tamiflu. Given these dangers posed by illegal internet drug sellers, it is even more important that FDA facilitate manufacturers' ability to provide truthful, scientifically accurate, and FDA-regulated health information to healthcare professionals and patients. Social media tools such as Wikipedia offer an unprecedented opportunity for third parties to speak about a sponsor's product without the knowledge or control of the manufacturer. Like any individual online, a biopharmaceutical manufacturer can only be accountable for a website that it controls. This should be defined as a site, one, whose content is controlled entirely by the manufacturer or its agents, two, where the manufacturer or its agents has authority to add or delete all content, and three, which is funded entirely by the manufacturer or its agents. For purposes of enforcement, once FDA determines that a site is controlled by a manufacturer, it must then determine whether the material may be regulated as promotional labeling or advertising under FDA's statute. Importantly, not all manufacturer communications online constitute promotional labeling or advertising about their products. Pharma's member companies recognize that they have an obligation to patients and healthcare professionals to provide meaningful and scientifically accurate information about their medicines online. Thus, pharma proposes that employees or agents of a manufacturer who post content on the manufacturer's site or other sites as part of their employment should be required to disclose their relationship with the manufacturer and any posted content. They should also make sure that content is truthful, scientifically accurate, and contains an appropriate balance between benefits and risks. Attributing statements to a manufacturer that the manufacturer did not cause, however, would be untenable. Such third-party statements simply do not fall within the definition of either labeling or advertising under the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, one of which would be necessary to support a violation of law by the sponsor. Actually, not the end of my slides, but by definition, manufacturers cannot control the content of most independent blogs, including SideWiki, and therefore cannot be held responsible for them. Even when sponsors take corrective measures, there's no guarantee that the sponsor's alterations or posted information will remain in a correct state. In conclusion, pharma appreciates the efforts of FDA in organizing today's meeting. We hope to serve as a constructive partner as the agency determines how best to regulate online promotional communications by manufacturers of medical products. I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Francer. Any questions from the FDA panel? Dr. Kang?
Thanks very much for your presentation. I appreciate that you put forth a suggestion as well. I do have a question, and I do see in your slide with regard to the FDA-approved universal symbol that you do say FDA would set conditions on use of the safety symbol by manufacturers. So digging into that a little bit, and I don't know how far into it you thought about it, but were you thinking also that FDA would have actually reviewed the information that is being linked to, or would it be up to the, the company would actually just be able to put that FDA-approved symbol there? Because I'm just wondering whether the term FDA-approved implies that, and then as you know, not all companies are not required to pre-submit their materials for us to review.
Sure. Just to clarify, and thanks for the question, the FDA would set conditions on what type of information should be at the landing spot, whether it's the PI and med guide or other FDA-reviewed materials. But it's very important that that information has been submitted to FDA, and at the very least, one would assume it would include medication guides if they're there in the PI.
Dr. Berman?
Just to follow up on that, I think the speakers that preceded you, if I understood the 3 Cs and the AdMed position and Mr. Kemp, appeared to be trying to create a universe of information that would be vetted, in fact, perhaps approved. And if I understand this correctly, if I were creating a site, I would be able to put this FDA-approved hyperlink on that, irrespective of who I am and the content of my site. In other words, creating either a parallel universe or a broader universe, perhaps. Is that the intent?
I don't believe so. I think, number one, FDA would have jurisdiction over the site used by manufacturers as part of your jurisdiction right now. I think we would need the cooperation of other stakeholders, including possibly the FTC and others who would have to be involved in policing use of the site by others. And I think that the use, what we're talking about, would be exclusive use by manufacturers under very specific conditions.
So it's a manufacturer's site or any blogger? In other words, I, as just an individual, can I create such a site and have access to this emblem, or can only a manufacturer?
The way we're envisioning it is it would be used by manufacturers in order to try to make sure that there's appropriate balance and others. But as we've mentioned in our comments, this is a concept we're floating, and if it would be, if FDA thinks it would be helpful for others to use, then perhaps it could be more open.
Ms. Davis?
Hi, thanks for your presentation. I have a question about accountability as you were describing it. If a manufacturer prompted a third party to communicate about its product on a third party site, perhaps providing incentives for them to do so, I just want to understand, are you saying that the manufacturer then would not be accountable for what the third party posted on that third party site?
It's hard to answer every hypothetical, and I think it really matters what you mean by prompted. If, for example, the third party were paid by the manufacturer and they had a formal relationship, then I don't think that would be independent.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Francer.